My husband sent my affair partner a thank you card 6 months after our divorce. When I first heard about it, I thought it was a joke. Then I thought it was revenge. Then I thought Noah had finally lost his mind. The truth was somehow worse, because the card wasn't sarcastic, it wasn't passive aggressive, and it definitely wasn't revenge. It was sincere. That's what haunted me. At the time, I was living with Ryan, the man I'd left my husband for. Officially, the divorce was over. The paperwork was signed, the house was sold, the custody schedule was settled. Everything was done, at least legally. Emotionally, nothing felt done. The strange thing about getting exactly what you think you want is that eventually you have to live with it. Ryan and I no longer had secrecy. No excitement, no stolen weekends, no hidden text messages. We had bills, laundry, groceries, normal life. And normal life was exposing cracks neither of us had noticed before. Small arguments became regular arguments. Differences became problems. Problems became patterns. Neither of us seemed particularly happy. Not miserable, just disappointed. One Friday evening, Ryan came home holding an envelope. His expression was strange. Confused. Amused. Concerned? I couldn't tell. What's that? He stared at the envelope, then handed it to me. The return address made my stomach drop. Noah, my ex-husband. I looked at Ryan. What is this? He shook his head. I don't know. The envelope was already open. Inside was a folded card. Nothing fancy. Simple, white, ordinary. The kind people buy in packs. I opened it and immediately wished I hadn't. Inside, in Noah's handwriting, were 6 words. Thank you for taking her place. That was it. No explanation, no signature beyond his name, no additional message. Just 6 words. I read them again. Then again. Ryan stared at me. What does it mean? I couldn't answer, because honestly, I didn't know. The words felt cruel, except Noah wasn't cruel. They felt sarcastic, except Noah wasn't sarcastic. They felt angry, except somehow they didn't. For days, I obsessed over that card. Every possible interpretation seemed wrong. Was he mocking us? Was he insulting me? Insulting Ryan? Trying to make some point? Nothing fit. Ryan eventually tossed the card into a drawer and moved on. I couldn't. Something about it bothered me. Maybe because I wanted Noah to be bitter. The card didn't feel bitter. It felt calm. And that made it worse. Several months later, Emma mentioned something during dinner. She'd spent the weekend with Noah, as usual. He seems happy. The statement surprised me. Happy? Emma nodded. Yeah. I didn't know what to say. For some reason, I'd imagined Noah frozen in time, still recovering, still rebuilding, still stuck. Instead, according to Emma, he was doing great. New hobbies, new friends, volunteer work, weekend trips. A life, an actual life, without me. That realization bothered me more than I wanted to admit. A few weeks later, I ran into Noah at a school fundraiser. It was the first time we'd been alone together in months. The conversation started awkwardly, then settled into something almost comfortable. Eventually, I brought up the card. I couldn't help myself. What was that about? Noah looked confused. The card. Still confused. The thank you card. Then he laughed. Actually laughed. And suddenly I knew. He'd forgotten about it. Completely. Which somehow made it worse. You remember that? I stared at him. Of course I remember that. Noah shook his head. I didn't think you'd ever see it. What? It was for Ryan. The answer wasn't helpful. I know it was for Ryan. No. He smiled. I mean, it wasn't for you. I felt irritation rising. Then explain it. For a moment, Noah considered his words. Then he shrugged. Okay. And just like that, the conversation changed. No anger, no bitterness, just honesty. When everything happened, I thought my life was over. I stayed quiet. Noah continued. I really believed it. The fundraiser noise seemed to fade away. Children laughing, parents talking. Everything felt distant. Then Noah smiled softly. But it wasn't. I didn't understand. Not yet. He continued. The divorce forced me to fix things. What things? Myself. The answer surprised me. Noah looked toward the gymnasium, then back at me. I spent years making my entire life about being a husband. I said nothing, because I knew that was true. Then he continued. When the marriage ended, I suddenly had no idea who I was. The honesty in his voice felt uncomfortable. Not because it was dramatic, because it wasn't. It was calm, measured, real. So I started figuring it out. I nodded slowly, still waiting for the card explanation. Noah smiled. As strange as it sounds, I don't think I would have changed if you hadn't left. The sentence hit me harder than I expected. Then he said, That's what the card meant. I stared at him, finally understanding, or beginning to. Noah laughed softly. I'm not saying the affair was good. Okay. I'm saying it forced something to happen. The words settled heavily between us. I had to rebuild. Neither of us spoke. Then Noah shrugged. And honestly, my life is better now. That sentence hurt. Not because it was cruel, because it was genuine. For years, I'd secretly assumed Noah was recovering, healing, trying to get back what he'd lost. Instead, he'd built something entirely different. Something new. Something he genuinely liked. I finally asked the question that had been bothering me since the card arrived. So you actually meant it? Noah smiled. Yeah. I laughed in disbelief. You thanked the guy who slept with your wife. The sentence sounded ridiculous out loud. Noah laughed too. When you put it that way, it sounds insane. It is insane. Maybe it was. But Noah wasn't finished. You know what the weird part is? What? He thought for a second, then answered. The worst thing that ever happened to me forced me to become a better version of myself. Neither of us spoke. Because what do you say to that? Months later, Ryan and I broke up. No screaming, no betrayal, just the slow realization that we'd built a relationship around escaping other relationships. And that wasn't enough. When Ryan moved out, he took almost everything. Except one thing. The card. I found it in the back of a drawer while packing. Folded, forgotten. Still there. For a long time, I stared at it. Thank you for taking her place. Years earlier, I thought those words were an insult. Now I think they were something else. Not forgiveness. Not revenge. Perspective. Because Noah wasn't thanking Ryan for the affair. He wasn't thanking him for the pain. He wasn't thanking him for destroying a marriage. He was thanking him for unknowingly forcing a change Noah would have never chosen himself. A change that eventually led somewhere better. The older I get, the more I realize that's what separated Noah from most people, including me. When something terrible happened, my first instinct was always to ask, why me? Noah asked a different question. What now? And maybe that's why he found peace before the rest of us. Because sometimes life doesn't get better after the worst thing happens. Sometimes it gets different. And if you're lucky, different eventually becomes better. The last time I saw Noah, years later, I almost mentioned the card again. I almost told him how long I'd obsessed over 6 simple words. Instead, I laughed and shook my head. because after all that time, I finally understood. The thank you card was never really about Ryan. It was about a man who refused to let the worst chapter of his life become the entire story. And somehow, against all logic, that made all the difference.